guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Welcome back to the Club Mobile, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
We are super excited to have you all back with us today. And once again, we're taking it back to the days of just Winnie and I having a good yap. Just
These
a
are my
good
favorite,
yap.
though.
These are some
These are
of
my
my
favorite.
favorite. I love having guests come on and I
Yeah.
love getting to talk to such incredible people. But every once in a while, I love to just sit down and like just have a good yap, just me and you.
And I feel like we learn so much doing these as well
Yeah.
because it really like has us like digging our nails into all this new stuff, and I really love sharing it with everybody else.
Me
So
too.
I love sharing what we have found, and I love sort of like throwing it back to everyone else to be like, what did we get wrong? What could we have said? What could we have added? You know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
That's really enjoyable.
I
I
also
really
love
like
the
that.
occasional episode where we don't have to show our face because I can just, we could just roll up. We could just roll up in
Yeah.
our comfy clothes and
I'm really glad no one can see me right now. I'm in an oversized Stardew Valley t-shirt and a pair of leggings that I bought when I was pregnant the first time.
Woo!
So we're excited to talk about
I am
this.
too. I am too. I feel like every time we kind of dip back into the Hollywood glamour era of the
Yeah.
40s and the USO, you get really excited. And
Yes,
I get
it's
really excited because I'm like, she's gonna have a moment.
yeah, I love talking
She's
about
gonna shine.
I love talking about this particular group of women.
Yes.
I think it's because as well it was something that I knew about before we began this.
Hmm.
So it's nice for me to revisit things that at the time had no meaning and now they have so much meaning. So
It's
that's
very
quite
true.
nice.
It's very true. You always kind of know, like, hey, the celebrity sold war bonds, but
Yeah, there's always like another layer to
there's
it. Like for
always
example,
like celebrities selling war bonds. I swear, I feel like we're peeling back an onion because every time we get somewhere, I'm like, wait a minute, there's more.
there's more and more to it. And especially this group of women, you know, we talk about the Red Cross girls and the Aero clubs, and we've spoken about, of course, the Hollywood canteen and the stage door canteen at length for multiple episodes. This group of women, the so-called USO girls, I feel like they were such an amalgamation of both of these things, but also entirely completely separate. They were sort of
Yes.
regarded as an offshoot of both things.
Yeah.
And then the USO girls' mission was to make the fellas feel at home.
Right. Like the
So
mission was very similar across every
yes,
kind of offshoot of it.
it
Was
seems to be like every single woman was told the same thing, even if they
yeah.
were a part of these different groups.
The mission was very
Um,
much the same. The men, the GIs were the absolute
yeah,
top tier focal point for everything. But I was not surprised, but not surprised to find out that the USO, their qualifications were not much, they were much less and much more of the physical versus
yes,
the education and the mental, whereas the Red Cross was like, you
yeah.
have to be educated, you have to have held a job before you signed up,
You
you
have to
have to
be
be within
X
a certain,
age.
yeah, you have to be within a certain
Yeah,
age bracket. The USO qualification was charm and beauty. You had to be charming, you had to be
yes,
beautiful, and looks didn't hurt either.
yeah. The rules for the USO girls were slightly more lax due to the
Yeah.
fact that they were not enlisting in any sort of military branch.
Right, right. And
They
even
were
though the Red Cross
essentially
was
there.
civilian and not a military branch, they still functioned with the stringency of a
Yeah,
military branch.
yeah. So essentially, these women were here just to have a good time, to show the GIs a good time before they went off to war. And a lot of them sort of lauded the group as a way to bulk up their social life and a way to
Yeah.
make more friends. So it was far more lax than any other group of women that we have discussed in this capacity.
But
Um,
they did still have a serious job. I mean,
they did, yeah. They were trained. You know, the training wasn't as intense as say, the Red Cross, or
Right.
as I wouldn't even say those at the Hollywood Canteen had training. They had talks and they had lectures, and this was something sort of
Right.
similar. They were taught how to speak to the men. They were taught how to soften homesickness.
Yeah.
They were sort of taught how to talk to the men that had returned from war already, whether they were medically discharged, injured, that kind of thing. Sorry, it's called Wounded Peanut. And
Injuries when you fall out of a tree.
they were taught how to speak to these men in such a way that they felt understood.
Right.
So it was a lot to learn, but yes, not as intense as any other branch that we have spoken about. So the USO girls hung around the clubs and they did the general activities that we have spoken about many times. They would play cards, they would speak with the men, and again, there's the line of providing a taste of home.
Right. Right.
Not making them feel homesick, not making them feel scared or lonely. One of the quotes about the USO girls and the clubs that really stuck out to me was from Our Mother's War by Emily Yellen. And she essentially said that the women were charged with providing friendly diversion to the younger troops, to troops in their early to mid 20s. So really, it was please distract this puppy before he goes insane.
I mean, that's the most simple way to put it. Yes. So let's back up with what exactly was a USO club.
Yes.
So USO Club was a United Service Organization club. They were formed in 1941, and these centers just very quickly began popping up everywhere.
Yes, they knew that a lot of troops needed support, and what better way to give males support than to bring in women.
Once again, send in the girls.
Once again, send in the girls. These women were all screened, essentially. They were essentially put in front of a judging panel.
Right.
I believe they did have to have a good education. I believe they had to be in college. I don't think they had to have had a degree, but they were pre-screened and seen if they were, quote, good girls and sexually respectable. Of course, relationships and dating were banned within the group with the GIs, but a lot of women did not listen. Of course they didn't.
Right? So these women were basically recruited to serve donuts, dance, talk with the troops, and they were essentially a Red Cross Aero Club kind of offshoot.
Yeah.
But the biggest task was boosting morale.
Yeah, the same as every group we've kind of discussed, is that the point was to boost morale for these men, and to, there was one quote I found when we were researching this, and it was to make the men less scared of going into the face of the war. It was to sort of, there was the quote was something like, now I've danced with this woman, I feel less scared about going to war. There's something to win the war for. And as much as they love their country and as much as they were so patriotic, it was actually a pretty girl who was dancing with him at a club that made him feel less scared. But yes, a lot of the girls ignored the rule of no dating. A lot of them married the soldiers that they met at the clubs as well.
Yeah.
So,
and they were, mostly middle class, mostly white women, and they would be classified as sexually respectable, which is again where the no fraternization rule comes in.
Yeah, but obviously it was ignored.
Correct.
Because of course it was. There was one desegregated unit for African American USO girls and African American troops.
One.
I didn't,
right?
Just one. And I never found the location of said group or like the USO center where they operated out from. I never found that.
I'm not surprised, but this is where I'm like, oh, because there were multiple.
Yeah. Across the world too.
Across the world, multiple.
Here and in Europe.
Yeah. One,
and I'm not entirely sure where that was located. I don't know if that was here in the States.
So if you were nowhere near it, You
That
were
was it.
shit out of luck, basically.
Essentially, yeah, you were shit out, like, which sucks. Oh, I mean, it's abhorrent.
It
But
is.
but for the time period, of course, it's sort of like, well, that's not surprising.
Right. It's sort of very much like, well, we gave you one.
Yeah, it's sort of like a really shit answer, isn't it? We
It's
gave
a
you
very
one, you can go
backhanded, it's
find
a very
it. Yeah,
backhanded way of saying,
here, here
here,
you
we
go.
gave you one. Okay.
Yeah, it's extremely, and the fact that I could never find
Where
where
it was.
exactly it
Yeah.
was. So that just adds another
If
layer of
anybody out there
nonsense to
listening
it.
happens to know where the one singular African American USO club was located, please let us know.
Yeah, I would love to know
Please
because there was
send us a
never a clear
message and let us
answer.
know where it was because we had a very hard time finding it.
Very hard time finding it. I believe these girls were also put in front of a committee and they were also judged upon the same way that the white women were. So
Yes.
I believe at least that was across the board. There was no sort of, issue
Right.
with that.
It's not like they screened the African American women and just let in all the white women. They literally screened
Yes,
everybody.
yes, exactly. And the women knew that they were there to provide much needed morale. And there was another quote that I found from someone on a USO committee that would, judge all these girls put in front of them. And they said that they would pick them and they knew that the men needed the company of women. They knew the men needed the company of a pretty girl on a Saturday. Apparently, that would make him more patriotic and more willing to face the enemy.
If
That
he
was
got
their
to dance with a
theory.
pretty girl.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that these men were incredibly patriotic, and I know that, of course, the women were as well. But something about that quote was it's. I found it very sweet. Of all the of all the things to make a man want to win a war, it's a
A pretty
lovely woman.
face, right? It's a pretty face.
Yeah, yeah. They had some pretty strict rules
They
as well.
did. I think they took a lot of cues from the Red Cross,
They
honestly.
absolutely did. Which I found quite surprising. Yet the women that were in the USO clubs, they found them a lot stricter. Whereas now I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, it's kind of lax. Really,
Yeah.
it's just like there were three big rules. One of which was that the girls couldn't leave until the dance or the event was over, and they could only leave with their designated chaperone. So if they
Right.
had arrived independently with either another group of women or the person they were on a date with, they could only leave with them.
Right. So if you
But
came
if
with a group,
they,
you had to leave with your group and your chaperone. If you came in a
yeah,
private car, you could leave immediately after the dance was over, but you couldn't leave before the
yeah,
dance was finished.
no, you
Which
could not
then
leave
begs
until
me to
everything was
then
done.
begs the question, what happened if your date had to leave? Like a lot of times these men would get orders like, we're moving out in 2 hours.
Yeah,
What would happen? This begs the question of now, what would happen if now your date has left and you came in a private car with your date and now do
yeah,
you go back with another group? Like, do you kind of tack yourself onto a group that
yeah.
came with a chaperone and go back with them? What were
Are
the
you
rules
allowed to leave
there?
alone in
You're
that
not allowed
case?
to leave
Yeah,
alone, so you probably have to tack yourself onto a chaperone or let a chaperone know, hey, listen.
I
Growing up
would.
in an era without like chaperones, to me, it's like,
Yeah, what
yeah,
would happen?
what would happen? I have
What
a lot
would
of questions
happen?
about this.
Lots of questions. I probably what would have happened was that the person in charge at the time would have been told, and then the girl would have been designated somebody else, or the person in charge would essentially send someone with them.
Right, probably.
I believe.
That would
I
probably
believe.
be the case.
That's another thing that isn't very clear, and I didn't even think to ask that. So that was pretty good.
Well, I'm not just a fancy hat rack.
I didn't even. I was like, oh yeah, they just left.
They would just
They just
up and
left.
leave, because a lot,
No.
and then like a lot of times, like especially like in areas that were heavily bombed,
Mm,
you read about this a lot in other books where it's like, you were at a Red Cross dance, you were at an aero club, and the buzz bombs came, and everybody had to leave and seek
hmm.
shelter, which a lot of times meant that the soldiers would go off with their unit to do what they
Yeah,
had to
and the
do. So
girls
where
would be
did that
left
leave these
alone. Yeah.
girls?
Yeah.
It's a very double-edged situation where it's like, well, did these girls just all kind of pack themselves together and leave together? Did they seek
Yeah,
shelter, like where the men would designate them to seek shelter? There's a lot of questions there. There's a
a
lot
lot of
of moving
questions.
parts. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's something I never actually thought of. That's very clever. I like that. I didn't even didn't even think about it. I was like, oh yeah, they just went with someone and they left with someone. I never thought of it any other way. So back to the requirements, as we said, they were pretty lax in comparison to anything
Oh
else,
yeah,
any other group that we have discussed.
right.
It wasn't a rule, but many of the girls held jobs and they used this time to volunteer to serve their country. It
So this was
wasn't like
basically
a,
volunteer work, whereas
yeah,
a Red Cross was
they
their job.
weren't they weren't officially quote unquote enlisted. They were not attached to any kind of auxiliary or official military. They
Right.
were just there to voluntarily serve their country. And a lot of them did it to improve their social lives because they made so many friends. And a lot of them would break the rule and go on dates with the GIs that they were not
Hmm.
supposed to. But the organization bragged that they had rounded up the loveliest girls in the nation. They thought that they had the best looking group of girls to entertain these men. I think they kind of talked it up because it was the USO clubs were meant to be for the GIs to use.
Yeah.
They were meant to be specifically for these men, and they had to kind of talk it up to sort of say this is the only place you should go when you're in the area,
Right.
even if you were in LA and you wanted to go to the Hollywood canteen, like yes, go and visit because it's sort of like a tourist trap by the
Right.
end of the
Go
ball.
and visit, have Joan Crawford serve you a sandwich.
Yeah, go and visit, have Betty Davis give you coffee and cigarettes, that kind of
When
thing.
you're done, go to the USO club and dance with the prettiest girls.
Yeah, it's sort of like going from, meeting stars to then going back to normalcy. Is that
Right.
you may have just danced with Ava Gardner, who is wearing an apron and a dish towel tucked
Right.
in.
But now you're gonna dance with Jane Doe.
Now you're gonna dance with just some regular gal because that
Right.
is who you're fighting for.
It's true. It's so
That's
true.
who you're winning the war for, essentially.
They had a handbook, which I think is very
They did.
interesting. Every organization had a handbook.
Yes.
You go back through the depths of what was given out at the time of the war to anybody who participated and volunteered or signed up in any capacity. Everybody
It
had
was
a
always a
handbook.
pamphlet. Always
Everybody
a
had a
pamphlet,
handbook,
always a
everybody had a
handbook.
pamphlet. This was called Hail Hostess.
Yes.
Hail Hostess, be sure you're sweet and clean. Consider clothes carefully.
And they couldn't
Slacks were
wear
not
slacks.
permitted.
Hmm?
Right? So pants for these girls,
No
slacks were not
pants.
permitted as the men wanted girls to look like girls.
I don't think the men would have been that bothered, to be honest. I think this was the organization's
Yes.
sort of fib. I don't think the men would have been too upset if they saw
No.
women in slacks.
Men
I
of
mean,
the
these
40s would cringe if they saw what I wore to work today.
and also these men, a lot of them loved Catherine Hepburn, and Catherine Hepburn wore nothing but slacks.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have been bothered. They'd have said, "Oh,
I
wait,
think
it's
they would
Catherine
not have
Hepburn's
been
sister."
bothered. They would have literally said, "Oh, a girl.
Literally, yes, they would have said,
Oh, a
"Oh, look,
girl."
he's a girl." Um, that's exactly what would have happened. They just wanted to
Yes.
have a lovely time with these women and they wanted to forget that they were about to go overseas potentially to their
Yeah.
demise.
And
So,
I really think that was a USO instructed rule that they, no slacks because the men want girls to look like girls. Now, I think the USO might have seen it in the sense of, well, they'll go to a Red Cross club where, a dolly is sitting there serving them coffee and donuts and she's wearing a skirt and, they could see her legs. Whereas if we let them wear slacks here, they're not going to come to us. They're going to go where the real girls are.
yeah, I think that was a part of it as well. I think they had
As
bragged
I
that they
air
had rounded
quote
up the
over
love.
real girls.
Yeah, they bragged that they had rounded up the loveliest girls in the nation, and I think they wanted to keep adhering to that by making them look the
Absolutely.
most
Absolutely.
feminine. and the most girly.
Mm-hmm.
So the handbook had a lot of, I think in this time period, we would say a lot of nonsense.
A lot of
Can't wear
word salad.
slacks. A lot of word salad, a lot of, there was some helpful stuff in there though, like how to speak to a GI who had come home with shell shock, which obviously we now
Yeah.
know PTSD.
How to help them write letters
um
home to their
how to
parents.
help them write letters home, how to, they would also like line them up with assistance and help, especially post-war,
Yeah.
because while the Hollywood canteen closed very quickly after the war, the USO centers stayed open long term,
Yeah.
and these girls would still volunteer and they would help the men find housing, find jobs, how to readjust to normal life. And they would do like groups and games and give these men a community to return home to.
Which is essentially what the USO still does today. The USO still exists.
Yes,
It's
yes,
just it's the USO has evolved with the years have as they've passed, and they are still a support center and a support community for members
yeah.
of the United States military and their families.
It's no longer just an entertainment
Right. It's not just an
center.
entertainment
It
platform
is.
anymore, which it still is. They still do
It still is.
provide
Yeah.
entertainment for the troops. I mean, I think I remember once upon a time seeing some videos or some photos of like, I think it was Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson were on a
Yeah.
USO plane going over to
Mm-hmm.
visit the troops.
Yeah.
And it's like they still do what they used to do. They just
Yeah.
have added on to it in a more familial way where you can now support a soldier
Yeah.
and his wife and his children or her husband and her children.
Exactly.
It's, which is, I think, a great thing to see how it's stood the test of time and continued to provide.
Yeah. And it has evolved so much. Of course, now it's not just
The prettiest
women that
girls.
can
It's
volunteer. It's not just the
correct.
loveliest girls in the
The
nation. It could be the
USO is not
loveliest men
just
too.
providing the loveliest girls in the nation anymore. They're
Yeah.
providing, financial support and,
Yeah.
you know, really
And community.
anything that a military family might need.
Yeah, which I find that the fact that it stood the test of time and the fact that it still does so much work, because obviously back then they knew nothing about how to help a
Right.
soldier readjust back to civilian life, and now
Right.
there's
Like
so
social
much
workers
more.
didn't exist, right? Somebody that you could sit
Yes.
with and, psychologist, I mean, a shrink would exist, but it wasn't. I mean, if you saw a shrink back in the 40s and 50s, you were one step away from taking a vacation with the grippy socks. I mean,
Yes,
truly, if you had to see a shrink during that time, you had
you
to
were not
be
right.
nuts. There was something
Yeah,
not right. You had to be
exactly.
unstable. Whereas now, I think everybody's like, my therapist, my therapist. And I'm like,
Mm. Yeah,
everybody's got a therapist today. Everybody sees a doctor.
everyone,
Everybody's got a therapist.
as they should. It's a very great thing. It's a very good thing, and I'm glad that we have moved on from the stigma of back then. But
Correct.
the fact that it can still provide so much, especially to the men and women that have fought overseas in these modern times as well. It's a great organization, and they still do the entertainment kind of
Oh
things.
yeah, they still bring in the celebrities, but
Yeah, I
that's not
feel
its
like
main focus anymore.
I feel like the USO, while it was great during World War II, I feel like during the Korean War was really when it was noticed. Like they had Marilyn Monroe in 54
Yes.
go entertain the troops during the
Yeah,
Korean
didn't
War.
she take a solo diversion? She was on her honeymoon with Joe DiMaggio and she
Yes.
just kind of diverted on her own and was like,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, I'm gonna go do this USO thing. I'll be back."
Yeah, literally. She just popped in, and from the video clip that I've seen, there is the amount of men stuffed in this designated area. It always
Yes.
tickles me. And they're
It's
all
so
just like,
true. It's so
yeah, they're
true.
all cheering because it's Marilyn. Um, but these girls, these women, they did it purely out of love for their country and purely out of
Yeah,
wanting to help.
they did. That is lost on a lot of people today. doing something for the love of your country,
Yes.
doing something for patriotism. It's a very
Yeah.
lost, it's a lot, I don't want to say lost tradition, because doing something like that is not a tradition. It's a lost value.
Yes.
And I think that the fight today where people say, you know, I'm doing this for our country.
Yeah.
Not always. I see things and I'm like, but are you really?
Yeah.
Or are you doing it for the clout on Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
doing it for media attention? Are you doing it for the right
Mm.
reasons? Yeah.
Are you doing it to be paid?
Are you doing it to be paid?
Yeah.
Are you
A
doing it
lot
to be
of
paid?
the
People in the USO
do.
back then did this for this was a volunteer job. These women would work during the
Yeah.
day. They would be secretaries. Maybe they worked in a factory during the day. And then they would find the time to give, right? They would
Yeah.
dig into their very, very sparse personal time and still find the time to give.
And still be
Because,
like
you know,
on the
my
ball and
husband's in
still be
Europe,
full
my
of
brother's in the
energy.
Pacific. So
Yeah.
maybe if I do this here, I'm giving back in a way that I can contribute that might support
Yeah.
my brother, or it might clear the head of a soldier who's going to go on the line next to my brother or my husband,
Mm.
and his clear head might help my husband or my brother survive.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm giving back, and this is the way I know how.
Yeah. It's very
It's
it's very us.
it's a very lost value
Yeah.
today, and it
And
really, it sucks, man. It
it
sucks.
it's so admirable that these women would essentially give everything. Like they're working through the day.
Or they're raising
They
children during the day.
but all they're raising children during the day. And they then decide, I'm gonna do one more thing and I'm gonna volunteer even further.
Correct.
Their lives have already been changed by entering the workforce. So they're doing a hard day's labor. They're expected to take up the same job as a man to prove themselves anyway. And then they go home, they somehow have the energy to get cleaned up, put on a nice dress, and go help a guy who's about to go overseas and be on the front line. And somehow
Right.
me playing cards with them is going to help them. There's a really great book I've had my eye on that we need to read. I would love to put it in the book club um, through the year or next year. It's called Good Girls, Good Food, Good Fun. And it's a story of the USO hostesses during World War II by
Oh,
Megan K. Winchell. So I would love for anyone to check it out. I haven't read it yet. It's been on our list forever
I
and
think we
ever.
should definitely squeeze that in.
We should stick it in somewhere because
Yeah.
I know it has a lot of information in it. Obviously, it has way more information in it than we have imparted today. I think we should put it in
Absolutely.
our little book club because I think that despite the fact that it wasn't as well known, I think it was just as important
Yeah.
as anybody else we have spoken about, even though they were essentially they were never defined as an offshoot. That's just my definition of when
But if
we've
you look
researched
at
into
it, I mean, if you
this.
look
It's
at
so
it,
similar.
the physicality of it is, yeah, it's the same but different, or it's different but the same.
Yes,
You know, the
similar but
name is
different for
different.
sure.
If the name is different, the function is the same.
They were not paid for this job, whereas obviously, of course, the Red Cross girls were paid for their job. They were
Correct.
not. They were not technically attached to any army. They were just an independent organization, and they did not have to do it. They
No.
were they were volunteering their time and the volunteering to boost morale of these men. It must have been so haunting to dance with one of these men and think, oh, he's leaving and may
Is he
not come
marching off
back.
to his death in the morning?
Right. Or even it's equally haunting to then have to entertain a man who has just come back from, doing his
Watching
25
six of his
missions.
buddies die.
Yeah, he's just come back from doing his allocated missions overseas, and now he's home and he's expected just to hop, skip, and jump straight back into civilian life with zero support. And I'm the one that has to provide that support.
Right.
That must have been incredibly daunting.
I think one of the things that we tend to forget a lot of the times is that America called on women, you know, we need you, we can do it.
Mm,
But, you know, a lot of these women, they still, there was nothing that mandated them to do it. There was no
Yeah.
mandatory, like the draft for men. Men were drafted, men were required to serve up until a certain
Yeah.
age point, obviously,
Yes.
health, pending and all that. Men were required. This was their job to go
Yep.
and fight.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were 4-H or over the age of ability, you were, maybe required to take a desk job within a military office.
Yes.
Hey, he served in World War I, but he's aged out now for World War II, but we're going to put him behind a desk.
Yep.
He's
We're
going to
still gonna have
he's
him.
still going to give his service. He's going to give something. The men were required. Women, while they were told to, this is your time, pick up your boots, Rosie,
Yep.
we're going to the factory. Nothing mandated them. They
Yep.
had the autonomy to decide whether they wanted to do this or not. She could have turned around a woman and said, I got 4 kids at home and I don't have time. I can't. But somehow they always still managed to find the time, which is why I'm always constantly in awe of the fact that they were never required to do it. They were never mandated to do it. Yet out of the goodness of their hearts, they did it for the good
They
of their
still did it.
country. They found the
And they
time.
somehow found the energy and the
Yeah.
time.
They found the
Keep-
energy, and I want to know where they found the energy because I'm still looking
Yeah.
for it.
And can I have some of that, please? I beg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Where
I
did
would
they
love some
find
of
it?
that.
I'm still looking.
It's just love of the game, I think. It's just love
Yes.
of
It's
doing
true. It's
things
love
for
of the
other
game.
people.
You're 100% right. It's love of the game because when my alarm goes off Monday through Friday and I have to get up and go to the office, I lay in bed and you would think where they were dragging me off to, right? You would think where I had to go 5 days a week.
Yeah.
When I have to
Yeah.
when I have to get up on a Saturday at whatever time we designate to record,
Hop, skipping,
out of
and
bed,
jumping.
ready to go, coffee pot's going. I'm like, it's Saturday. It's Dolly time, right? It's podcast. It's time. And it really lends itself to doing something you love, doing something you
Exactly.
want to do. You
Doing something
find the
that you want to
time.
do.
Right. Doing
And
something
it's
you
not-
want to do, you find the time.
It's not like required.
It's not required.
Essentially, we
This
are
is not
volunteering
required
our
of
time.
me, right? This is not required of me
Exactly.
after going to work 5 days a week. I'm not required to sit here with Winnie on a Saturday morning and drink my coffee and do this for whatever
But
reason.
we do.
But we do because we want to, because we
Exactly.
love it.
And it's also so important that we
It is
keep
so important that
keep
these stories
telling
get
these
told.
stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because this is not something that's ever sort of brought up in any documentary, in any kind of course there is now a book and it's his own independent story, but it's, if you don't know how to venture out to look for it, you're not going to find it. You're going to come up with
No.
Hollywood Canteen, Stage Door Canteen, which is not a bad thing.
No.
But I just don't feel like this should be kept as an afterthought, because
No.
the work that these women did is just as
It
important.
is absolutely not told in school.
It needs to be. Honestly, I have a very big dream of you and I, every like 3 to 6 months, we buy a clubmobile in England, we fix it up, we go around schools and bases dressed as dollies, and we teach these things to kids.
If anybody knows
That's
where
the
we can get
dream.
an old Green Line bus in the UK,
I have $3 and a pack of juicy fruit as payment.
we've got
That's as much
$5
as I
in a
can
dream.
give.
We've got $5 in a dream, right?
We make good
But
coffee. Does that count?
we do make good coffee.
Hey, here's your payment.
And we're working
Don't
on
go
our
to
we're working on our
Starbucks.
sinkers. But
Lardless.
we're working on our sinkers. Lard is just
Is it
Crisco.
lard?
It's just Crisco today. Yes, it's
Is it
Crisco.
shortening?
Yeah, it's shortening. It's
true.
Crisco. I bake with
Yeah.
Crisco all the time.
Yeah.
I have an old cookie recipe from one of my great aunts, and it's from the 40s. It's an old Italian cookie recipe. It's a 40s recipe. And ask me how much butter. No butter. Ask me how much Crisco goes in those cookies. A cup of lard. A cup of shortening goes in those cookies. Yep. They are the best.
Just felt my arteries clog.
They are the best cookies.
Delicious.
So while we're working on our sinker recipe, I do make the best chocolate chip cookies, guys. So we could
listen, we have ways of payment.
We do.
We've got
We have ways
of
of payment.
paying people back.
Ways
You
of
can find
payment
us a
and a
bus.
dream.
I've got £2 and I can offer you, I don't know, what do you want? Juicy fruit, ruffles. I mean, yeah.
Hershey bars.
Oh, and smokes. But no, I think, I think these women were so great, and I hate the fact that they are essentially an afterthought in
Yeah.
everything else. And I love learning more about them, and we need to get on with adding the book too.
We do.
The
We
book
got to
club
get
in the
that book.
next,
We got to get that book in one of our rotations, either second quarter or third quarter.
because I would love to discuss this again after we know more. Because again, I love that when we do just the ones of you and I, it's a very basic knowledge. And it's basic, like, I learned this, I'm telling you what I learned, and vice versa. And I love that we can then expand on it later through more resources and more people.
Yes, and I love that when we find a topic we love, we then immediately go searching for the books, because we then want to share
Yes.
those books with you guys, and we want to share them with Sage. And I love when we get to something and Sage reads. I love it when she reads the book, when Sage reads the book
Yeah,
finally, and we
Yeah.
get the immediate texts of, "Oh my God,
Oh my
I didn't
God.
know this. Did you
Yeah.
get to this part in the book yet? I'm on chapter this." There's something so fun about then sharing that knowledge with your friends.
Yeah.
So I'm 100% in favor of putting this in a rotation this year.
Yeah. Look out for it. Everyone
Yes.
look out for it. It
Yes.
will be there, and
We'll get
we
it
will
in.
have probably another lengthy discussion about it. And probably, because I always feel anxious and nervous that I've kind of not said the wrong thing. I feel like I fed the wrong information to people. I love to be corrected. So I always get nervous when it's something that I want to talk about, because I'm like, someone's going to tell me off.
No,
As a
I think that's
disclaimer,
one
feel
of the
free.
things. I think that's one of the things in this community where it's like nobody's going to tell you off for being incorrect, but what they're going to do is politely correct you,
Which is also fine.
which is
I
also
love that.
fine. Which is also
Yes.
fine. If you
I just
come
hope
at
I
us and
haven't-
if you come at us and you don't politely correct us though,
That's a
okay.
problem. But no, I think that is
No,
a
I
really
don't think I've
great.
encountered anybody in this community where they're like,
No.
hey, or a lot of times people are like, hey, I listened to your episode on this. Did you know this? Or,
Yeah, that's what I want to happen. I want a discussion to sort of ignite and be like, I did not know that. Thank you for telling me.
and
I
certain
will
people are
improve.
notorious for doing that, which means that certain people are becoming loyal listeners, which we love to see.
Which is great, which is really great.
Yeah.
Which I love. But no, I think, that's an excellent point to end on, is that if I've got anything wrong, please correct me. And
if anybody knows where that one singular African American USO club was, please let us know. We couldn't find it.
We know.
So this is a call to the community. If you know where it was, give us a shout.
And we will keep that information.
We'll keep that information in our pocket.
Post about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one.
I really
enjoyed this one.
I had a good time this morning.
And that's all that matters, is that we had a nice time.
I had a nice time.
Had a great time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We hope you had fun with us, too. And we will catch you the next time that the Club Mobile rolls through.
Bye.
Bye.